Welcome back to the Anniversary series where, yes, it's official, Lion King now, as of the 15th of June 2024, has turned 30 years old. And today for this Anniversary series, we'll be looking at some bits about behind the scenes and what exactly is its legacy all these years later, considering the fact that after multiple decades, it's still relevant. Considered by many as the best Disney movie of all time, with almost everyone agreeing at least it's certainly up there. Already on a hot streak from Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin, Lion King sat very comfortably in that lineup whilst also going in a completely different direction from them. In fact, looking at 1994 for movies in general, and it's kind of a great year for movies, alongside the world of Lion King on the animation front, you then have in the fleshy world the stories of Shawshank Redemption, Forrest Gump, Pulp Fiction, 4 Weddings and a Funeral, The Mask, Dumber and Dumber, yeah, we're in serious Jim Carrey territory here, True Lies, and honestly, the list goes on. And yet, against all of those fleshy stories, the highest grossing movie of that year was none other than the little 2D cartoon on the side, Lion King. At that time, it was the highest grossing animated movie of all time, as well as Disney's biggest in the company's history. Kind of looks like the kind of proper finale ending for 2D animation, considering Toy Story 1 would come out 1 year later. Maybe there's something thematic about that being the final climax for traditional animation. Maybe. And of course now it's become kind of ironic that we've gone full circle with the now definitively mid-photorealistic remake now holding that very same title of Disney's biggest grossing movie. In other words, 30 years later, and you can still use the sentence, Lion King is the highest grossing animated movie. As much as Disney doesn't like calling the remake animated, but I mean, come on, look at it. Now, to get into specifics, the original's also still the highest grossing hand-drawn animated movie. At a $986 million gross, this was insane numbers for any release, let alone an animated one. Why? Well, because at the time, no movie had ever made over $1 billion. In fact, this wouldn't happen at all until Titanic did it a few years later, and to make that fact even more crazy, it was going on to make $2 billion. That movie was a monster. But back to Lion King, beyond the success it had at the time, as emphasized by it being added to Disney's soul-sucking remake machine, Lion King is a timeless classic that is now a standard of most people's childhoods. If there's one Disney movie that everyone has seen, it tends to be this one. Somehow, I was the outlier on that. I didn't see this movie until 2016. But hey, it's still timeless. Even when you take the Disney timeline of every animated movie they've made, people don't know where to put Lion King because it's not attached to any time period. Just nature. Is it an ancient civilization story where the humans hadn't grown up yet? Or who knows, maybe there's a post-apocalyptic movie. There's probably a film theory about it. If not, I'll make it. Beyond a remake, The Lion King went on to have 2 sequels, with Lion King 1.5 being perhaps the wildest idea of a straight-to-home video movie. Although apparently there was that one time they made a time-traveling Cinderella 3, I think. But anyway. Alongside the sequels, they also did the Timon and Pumbaa cartoon, as well as the Disney Junior series Lion Guard, which honestly, I have no idea what that's about, but glad to know it's out there. Franchising doing franchising things. It's also one of the very few Broadway musical adaptations that didn't just evade being completely terrible and soulless, but actually was widely considered to elevate the themes and imagery of the original movie. And it's great, I went to see it once. It's still happening on the West End over here. Not to mention just the themes of the story are so strangely universal, you know? It's just life. And yeah, there's the remake that I still hear people refer to as live action, which I guess it's a compliment in a way, but that's where the compliments start and end with me. In fact, I was very much part of the vocal crowd that said that the photorealism limited the actual character expressions and emotions in that film, so even that is kind of an L from me. And yet, whilst being the peak of Disney's Renaissance era, in many ways, the production was the beginning of the end of it. You see, a lot of the foundational figures responsible for this new era of Disney, I'd say about Roger Rabbit onwards, fell away during this production. Just after this movie's release, Disney chairman Jeffrey Katzenberg resigned after 10 years in his position. He didn't waste any time about it either. He co-founded DreamWorks with Steven Spielberg less than 6 months later, despite the fact that he was almost actually attacked by a real lion on stage at a press event. God, apparently he pissed off everyone, even the main protagonist of Lion King. Although actually the real reason he left was actually because he had expected a promotion from CEO Michael Eisner that he ultimately didn't get, so he's kind of got the Gen Z approach of switching jobs until you make more money. Fair enough, go get your bag, I guess. Not sure if I have that opinion with Disney execs, but sure. But no, you see, the bigger loss to the Disney scene had happened a few months before Lion King's release, when Disney studio president Frank Wells tragically died in a helicopter collision with a mountain. Known to be a keen daredevil and explorer, Wells was known for using his downtime to climb mountains and had, in fact, scaled the highest summits on each continent, Everest included. Beyond mountaineering, Wells had also found time to lead Walt Disney Studios into its most successful period since Walt's passing, alongside Eisner and Katzenberg. Better still, he was also fairly popular with the creative teams and other Disney workers, which is something you don't really see every day in modern corporation, especially these days. So to say the least, his death cast a huge shadow over the Disney team right before this movie was coming out. This isn't to say that the issues started there for the Mouse House. You see, originally, the Lion King crew were very much seen as the B team in Disney's eyes. You see, following Beauty and the Beast breaking all kinds of records and becoming the first animated movie nominated for Best Picture, the animation department were ramping up their release schedule. Specifically, Katzenberg had mandated that they were going to aim to release 2 movies a year. Because that's the lesson that should have been learned from Beauty and the Beast, a notoriously difficult production that had the first couple versions thrown out before they even got it right. Hey there, thank you for making it halfway through this video. As per usual, do subscribe if you haven't already. We'll keep up with the occasional animated movie anniversary if you're interested, but we also do all sorts of other things. Look at all these playlists that we do around the topic of animated movies, and we're always pushing for something more, so I'll be happy to hear your suggestions. Anyway, let's get back to the 30-year anniversary of the original Lion King. Nevertheless, they had a lot of people on the Beauty and the Beast who were ready to run their own films. The talent behind animating that movie was ridiculous at all levels. Even in the smaller animation supervisor roles, you had a young artist called Chris Sanders, the guy who would go on to direct Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon. From this team, the best of the best were put on what Disney were gunning for as their next Oscar bait masterpiece. That's right, they were put onto Pocahontas, the most memorable and culturally inoffensive of all the Disney movies. Yeah, a real-life Native American historical figure being made by a bunch of white nerds? What could possibly go wrong? Anyway, whilst Disney put their A-team on the movie that would go on to play second fiddle to Toy Story in 1995, the rest were left with another movie. Hamlet with lions. Anyone fancy doing that? For the team at the time, this may have felt like it could be a step backwards. Disney had been running hit after hit, going back to their fairy tale adaptations that the Renaissance era exclusively was at that point. This talking lion movie seems like a pullback. Before Little Mermaid, there had been movies like Oliver and Company and The Great Mouse Detective, which to be fair were pretty decent. Actually, The Great Mouse Detective is great, I've seen it recently. However, they did represent the previous era of Disney. The 1980s, we've lost faith in our animation department and we'll move them out of the original Walt Disney Animation building to a cheaper facility era. To go back to the random adaptations with talking animals thing did not seem like the hot ticket, which is why it was second banana to that all-time masterpiece Pocahontas. It's not even as direct an adaptation as previous movies. I definitely think the movie's its own original story that's just been inspired by Hamlet. Depending on what side you fall on this debate, it may very well have been inspired by Kimber the White Lion. That's a whole other rabbit hole that I have never got my head around, but let's just say the themes and beats are eerily similar there. Anyway, clearly, this wasn't the direction Disney was looking to continue in. Alas, B-team. The 2 directors they chose weren't first choices before, and to be fair, didn't really have the career you'd expect after either. For Rob Minkoff, this would be his most notable credit, but he'd subsequently go on to direct the Stuart Little movies, the Peabody and Sherman movie, and Eddie Murphy Haunted House movie? I mean, aside from that last one, I'd say it's a decent enough CV, but it's not The Lion King. And co-directing with him, you had Roger Allers, the legendary director who would go on to direct Open Season. Oh, I guess maybe they should have done more movies together. Anyway, the pair were chucked onto this movie to try and make it work. This isn't to say that Disney didn't care about The Lion King, but when you're banning strong, you don't want to suddenly come off with an absolutely terrible movie. You want consistency, which is something Jeffrey Katzenberg would seem to forget when it came to running DreamWorks. Anyway, they wouldn't sleep at the wheel with investing in the production. For the songs, they'd go back to Tim Rice for the lyrics following success collaborating on Aladdin. However, instead of their golden boy Alan Menken, who'd been, no pun intended, instrumental for the other movie's songs, they of course went for Elton John, a pop legend who'd go on to also contribute to the prestigiously modern classic Romeo and Juliet. As for the score, they went for relative newcomer to the game, Hans Zimmer. Yeah, we never heard from that guy again. As for voice cast, this was fresh off of getting Robin Williams as the genie, so after annoying Williams for using him in Aladdin's marketing, which he specified not to do, Disney were very keen to get into that business. Well, Katzenberg certainly was, and would later change the whole voice acting industry, doing so with Shrek 7 years later. Anyway, for Lion King, they wanted a true ensemble, and boy did they get one. James Earl Jones, Jeremy Irons, Rowan Atkinson, Matthew Broderick, Whoopi Goldberg, Nathan Lane. To be fair, Shrek gets all the crap for celebrity voice casting, but Lion King clearly did a lot of the legwork here. So yeah, they've clearly invested big time in the music and voice cast. However, the story here is the animation team. They were not the first team to carry that Beauty and the Beast Lion King baton, and yet they wound up making what is now often considered the very best of the bunch. Lion King is one of the most iconic and celebrated movies of all time. It may very well be your favorite. However, just remember, when it comes to who worked on the movie, the timeless success of the movie is very much an underdog story, which is the most role reversal pack of cards you can imagine for modern day Lion King. Being fully revamped with a new slick of paint and most likely covered as the major A-team, I mean they had Jon Favreau as the director that time around, and now going on to making more sequels based off of it, I think it could be easy to see that 30 years later, perhaps the magic of The Lion King has fallen off over time, or perhaps The Lion King has stayed exactly the same as always being the perfect representation of Disney at any given moment. This is Disney's largest success on the traditional animation stage, right before 3D threw Disney completely up from under the rug. From here, they would leave Lion King alone, making the odd things off to the side while they stumbled and shuffled all the way through things, and now they finally come back on their new era of flesh-tubering remakes of every movie under the sun, but losing the core essence of what made these movies so great and nostalgic for simply trying to chase the buzz that is the success from such nostalgic productions. Add on to the fact that since this video has been written, the actual trailer for the second movie has come out, and it looks alright. I guess we'll just have to see what kind of legacy the Lion King franchise will get beyond 30 years, as maybe the good times were only in the 90s, and it'll only begin to degrade more with time. After all, the lifespan of a lion is generally around 20 years anyway, but at least it was good when it was good. Happy 30-year anniversary to Disney's original Lion King, starring the director of Open Season. My name's been Daz. Thank you very much for reaching the end of this video. Do share with us your memories of when you first watched The Lion King. Was it as magical as it probably was? Or were you like 20 like me? And on that note, I shall see you in a little bit.